Over pasuk on the sentence what it says, Ushmartem is mishmarti, that you have to protect my commandments. The rabbis say you have to make a mishmeres to mishmarti. You have to make commandments on the commandments. This is the whole foundation. This sentence, which appears now, this is the whole foundation of the permission of the rabbis and the commandment of the rabbis to make commandments. Which also the stringencies that a person can take on himself, but the permissible things, in order that he can come to v'shalom, that he should not come, God forbid, chas v'shalom, to an isser. A person sees that he's having trouble with food, so he can take a vow. It says nowadays you're not supposed to do it. Take a vow, because it's such a serious thing to take God's name in vain. You swear to God that you're not going to eat pickles anymore, and then you do it. It's very, very severe. But nevertheless, there is an idea, a person, let's say, inside of himself, he can take a decision, a resolution, that he's not going to do certain things, like it says in books of Musar, that a person has to keep himself far away, even from permissible things, if he sees that he's losing himself, in order not to come to actually do a forbidden thing. In other words, it's permissible to eat pickles, kosher pickles, but he sees that he's going overboard and he can't stop himself. So therefore, he should forbid himself even permissible things, so he shouldn't come to do forbidden things. Right? And eventually he'll say that the main thing is I should feel good, so he'll do anything to make himself feel good. So therefore, it says you have to make a fence around the fences. Varan, Vazayin, and there's some people that say like this: why do you have to look for new stringencies? We can understand that the rabbis, that they made things that are forbidden. And it says, Lo sasur min hadavar asher yagidu lecha. The rabbis say there's certain things that we shouldn't do. So that's good enough for me. I have to make more stringencies on myself. In other words, you don't have to be too careful with yourself. Because you're not making something forbidden that the rabbi said is forbidden. You're making something up on your own. You shouldn't do that, right? For instance, watching what you say, watching where you look. Now, what do you have to watch those things for? Watching how you dress, right? You have a couple of buttons open, a big deal, right? Because you can, how much more so to make new things. It's enough for what the rabbi said is forbidden. You do the minimum. Uvi brings, like it brings a prior. What's the proof? The proof is from the Gemara and the Yerushalmi that a person should, after a person dies, it says that a person is going to be asked why you didn't have pleasure from all these permissible things that you're allowed to. We're here in the world in order to use the world. So the more you use the world, the better, right? So go for it. Even more. Just like doing things, if you want to do something in a thing which is difficult, is nitkadai to marbezayin chumros in idurim. If things are difficult, then don't make it more difficult for yourself. Durach them, because by means of this, a person can lose the whole thing. Too much of a person takes too many stringencies on himself. This can also bring that he can lose the whole entire Torah, God forbid. It's just so difficult, such a big burden. And where's the proof? The proof is from the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. This is the source of all sin. That came because Chava, Eve, misunderstood the severity, and she made it more severe. What happened over there? It says, God said, don't eat from the tree. The snake came along and said, not only should you not eat it, you should not also touch it. This is a thing which was not commanded. Therefore, because he said, lo tuchlam, the commandment was don't eat from the tree. And the snake said also don't touch it. From this came a big sin. The same thing by us. You don't have to be too careful about how you dress, about how you talk, about how you eat, where you eat, what type of friends you keep. You should just do what it says in the Bible. That's good enough. And the rabbis added enough stringencies. You don't have to be careful about where you look, right? Where your eyes travel, what type of books you read. You have a television in your house. You know, you can turn things off. No big deal. It says, look what happened to Eve when she added on things. Came out a terrible tragedy. So therefore, don't be too strict with yourself. Says the Rebbe, that's also a good idea, but the problem is it's not right. All the commandments and the stringencies from the rabbis were given from the same God. And all these negative commandments came from basically the same. The positive commandments, it says in the Tanya also, that all the positive commandments, things you should do, that comes from the first of the 10 commandments. I am God. There's things I want you to do. And don't have any other gods. There's things that I forbid you to do. So that what it says, there's a negative commandment that says, lo sasur, don't go after your heart and your eyes. The rabbis, that's why the rabbis made these laws, and they had the commandment to make the laws to keep people away from being too free, too natural, from the natural tendency to think, I'm God, I call the shots. Und the chiluki dinim zwischen the Oraisa and the Rabbanan. Don't think that therefore you can make a distinction between what the rabbis say and the Torah says. No, it all comes from the same God. Zayin mitzad zem was azoi, the Torah and the commandments comes from the fact that God says, there it goes, Baruch Hashem. The Torah wanted that from the Oraisa, the Torah decided that a commandment from the Torah, if you have a doubt, that you have to be severe. And if it's a commandment from the rabbis, you can be lenient. But it doesn't mean that the commandments of the rabbis are really more lenient. The Torah just decided that. Really, all of them are the commandments of God. Also, similarly to the obligation that everybody has to make fences around himself, because this is the commandment of the Torah, you have to ushamartam it mishmarti. The whole intention is you know yourself, you have to be strict on yourself so as not to come to eventually do things that are really forbidden from the Torah. In addition to the fact, the positive commandment that you have to be kadoshim to you have to be holy, you have to make yourself holy. You have to make yourself holy in things that are permissible to you. It's a famous Ramban. We'll see, maybe we'll even learn it today. Famous Ramban, that he says that a person can be a total, monster and go according to the Torah. You can do all the laws of the Torah, follow exactly, and you can become the most disgusting person in the world. And find there's loopholes in the Torah and everything. A person, if he wants to go and eat with two hands, stuff himself, right? As long as he's eating kosher, according to the Torah, it's okay. But that's disgusting. Why would you want to do a thing like that? Because I can. He can. Well, if a person wants to do everything that he can, so eventually he's going to stop looking for loopholes also. He's just going to do whatever he wants to, and he'll just find excuses. A person has to make himself holy, even the things that are permissible. This goes around. This also is in the category of ushamartam et mishmarti. You have to make fences to my fences. make fences from what I say. A very an example is there's these ladies that they decided that they want to go down to the now a recent thing. They want to put the tefillin on and go to the kotel and pray. They want to. What's their taina? Why do they have to do this? Because they say it's permissible. It says in the Shulchan Aruch that a woman can put on tefillin. So what's wrong? So what's wrong is if you look in the Shulchan Aruch over there, it says right in the Ramad, but women can put on tefillin, but they shouldn't. They shouldn't do it. It's not a good thing. No, so why are you paying attention to where it says that it's permissible? And just one line under that, it says, but it's not a good thing. Because there it says not a good thing. That's just one person's opinion. No, the opinion that says above that, right, that women can put on tefillin, that's also somebody's opinion. Right? If you want to interpret the Torah however you want to, then eventually you come to Christianity. Right? You can just interpret anything you want to. The Jewish people means spiritual. Right? Keeping Shabbat means spiritual. Right? Don't kill, spiritual. Everything is spiritual. You can translate anything you want to. So says the Rebbe, as soon as you start to try to find loopholes in what the rabbis say and try to find the most lenient way to do whatever you want to, right? To have the smallest keep, you don't have to put on tzitzis, but you have to put on only if you have a four-cornered garment and you wear it, then you have to, but if you don't want to wear a four-cornered garment, you don't have to put on tzitzis. But it says in the Shulchan Aruch that a person who fears God should put on tzitzis. Okay, but I don't want to fear God, right? You don't want to. Good, if you don't want to do that and you decide from what you want to, so eventually you're going to be the boss of everything. Und das, was bringt a raya, that what it brings a proof from the Yerushalmi about the sin of the tree of knowledge. The answer, what's the answer, right? It's true. Chava, Eve, because she added things on, so she came to a tremendous sin. What do you got to say about that? So the answer is very simple. The first man, when he was in heaven, so he was a pure vessel for godliness. And he had no connection to do anything bad. What's the proof that he had no connection? Gan Eden, where he was, this was like heaven on earth. Heaven on earth means it was pure good. It couldn't bear any bad to be there. Therefore, after Adam sinned, he was evicted from Gan Eden. God kicked him out. Adam was pure. He was a pure vessel for godliness. Therefore, everything he did was automatically the will of God. That's why it says that the snake didn't go to Adam. It went to Eve first because she didn't hear the commandment directly from God. Therefore, they didn't have to have any, Adam didn't have to have any worries about making extra things, extra precautions. Because there was no worry that he was going to do anything bad, exactly the opposite. Adam was supposed to use the world as much as possible. Any extra precautions that were taken would be unnecessary. How do you say mutar? Would be superfluous. In fact, even more, it would be just ballast. It would just drag him down. Adam had to be free to do what God wants, because that's what it means that Adam was a pure vessel and a pure vehicle for God. Therefore, everything they did was holy. So when he did anything, everything was already connected to God. So by him refraining from doing things, there was only one thing that God said don't do. Don't eat from the tree. That's what God told him not to do. Only one thing. But everything else he should have done. There was no reason for him to add on things like don't touch it, the tree. Touching the tree was okay for him. By means of this, if he would have put restrictions on himself, that would have prevented him from doing his job. He was supposed to fix up the world. It wouldn't have been able to elevate the world. Just like in the Holy Temple, the Kohanim have to eat holy things, or eating food on Shabbat. It says there when he was in heaven, but we're not in heaven now. Now we have to be very careful. So that's what so it's the same type of a thing, right? a person decides on himself, I'm going to look in the Shulchan Aruch, and whatever is permissible to do, I'm going to do it. I said, yeah, but you have to look also in the small letters, because the whole purpose over here is to serve the creator of the universe. And part of serving the creator is not doing bad things, holding yourself back. In fact, that's even in many ways a greater way to serve God. When Adam was in Gan Eden, there wasn't much to fix up. You didn't have to beware of bad things. He never was suspected that his wife would be his worst enemy. He never suspected. So Adam, his thing was to elevate everything he had to do. But we have to be careful, and we have to make protection to our protections. Then when a person is totally protected from bad, that, by the way, just incidentally, is the idea of putting on a head covering, a yarmulke, right? Putting on your head. What's the idea is that why you put a yarmulke? What's the idea of putting a yarmulke? That my intelligence goes up to here. But this is reminding me that God is far above my intelligence, far above that what I want and what I understand is not necessarily right. And that's what's called yarmulke in Yiddish, comes from the word yirat malka, the fear of the king. So some people want, it to be a little bit smaller, or a little bit, okay, it's just a sign. It doesn't necessarily mean anything. But some people want to have the smallest yarmulke as possible, right? The smallest yarmulke, which is permissible. You can do it. But on the other hand, why not remind yourself of the fact of how far away we are from understanding God, and how God's in? Why not? Now, wearing a big yarmulke does not ensure that you're going to be, the Jew the way you're supposed to be. But at least that it's in the right direction. Can be in the right direction. This doesn't preclude being happy. We're serving God. We're being happiness. But in order to do that, you have to remove side things. What's it like? A person is married, but he sees other nice looking ladies, and he says, so he's never going to really be happy with his wife. Which brings me to tell a joke, and I'll tell this joke and then I'll this. A man goes to work. Somebody just told me this joke the other day. A man goes to work in his job, and his secretary says, hello, Mr. Gross, how are you? And he thinks, well, why doesn't my wife talk nice to me like that? And then a client comes in, a lady, and she's dressed up nice, says, well, why doesn't my wife dress nice like that? And then he orders food to come out from the catering next door. The food comes in, and he eats. He says, why doesn't my wife cook like that? Like this. When he comes home, his wife says, oh, hello, how are you? He says, wow, the whole day I was just thinking about you. Joke. The fact of the matter is, a person is thinking about other things. So, he's never going to be really happy with his wife. On the other hand, if he doesn't look around, then he can see the good qualities that are there. And just the fact that he's married, God made a unification between them, that's enough to make him happy. But if he's looking around, so what does he have to do? So he has to control his eyes. He has to control who he talks to. He has to control his thoughts. He has to control it says in the Torah somewhere, you have to control all your things for this. Just don't do forbidden things, right? But by means of protecting himself and keeping himself from bad, then he's able to do good with more sincerity and genuineness. Okay, now let's do the Yom Yom. Here we go. Yom Yom. Yom Yom. I'm sorry, I was very disappointed that I couldn't find that Sikha, but okay, we learned a nice Sikha from the Rebbe also. A person, I'm going to look for it now, God willing. A person puts himself with a big talit. You don't have to cover your face down. We put a small talit on underneath your shirt. There's some Hasidim that wear it over. We wear it underneath. There's also some Sephardic Jews that they hide the tzitzits also. We don't. We reveal them. This is all good, all the wonderful customs. And we put a big talit over your head. There's a big talit, so it's unnecessary to cover your head down to your mouth. But we do cover our eyes up to it. During the days of Sphira, the custom is to learn the tractate, the Talmud tractate Sota, because it has 50 pages in it. So we learn one page each day, in addition to the regular things that we learn. Good. Have a good day, everyone. With Mashiach now. I look forward to seeing you all at 3 o'clock. maybe we'll learn this Kadoshim TU. We'll learn the explanation of the Ramban on this, and we'll also continue learning the commandments. There's so many commandments. There's 79 commandments we said in these two Torah portions together, and we'll continue learning them. Have a good day. God bless you all. Thank you very much for coming.